That terribly formal.
Fair enough.
Please.
All right. So my question was, you mentioned two countries.
Can I identify you?
Ed, my name is Eddie. I'm a master's student, not specifically engineering, but I was curious as to what was the word as to why the U.S. wasn't in agreement with this idea, or Japan. And you said the outgoing administration also heeded that the incoming one would also stay away from it. What was the word that they, yeah.
So,
That may change, but
yeah, sure. No, I mean, this, we'll see where,
speaking to Mike too.
I don't know, thanks. I don't know what this administration is going to do on this. I mean, the fact that less than 3 months into his presidency, Trump is hosting Xi Jinping at his home in Florida, I think is a very, very good news. And I think that if President Trump attends the Belt and Road Forum that's going to be taking place mid-May in Beijing, I think that would be a very good opportunity to discuss together projects to build things together. Trump loves building things. This is a great way to work together on things. The rationale before, I'm sorry to say, was really a geopolitical one, where there's been an overall attempt to try to contain China in its growth or to see the rise of China as a threat. Many think tanks, for example, in the United States, see the situation that way. I'm based in D.C., and I've been to some Silk Road events in Washington, where many of the American speakers have the idea that China is going to take over the world with this, and that it's very, a nefarious and bad thing, and we have to prevent China from having too much clout in the world. So take, for example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, President Obama had said about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, he said, if we don't set the rules, China will. As though it would be totally outrageous for China, the largest nation, right there on the Pacific, to have a large say in how trade works. I mean, it's, you've got to work together with other countries. And there is a dying outlook that's very prevalent in the United States and in Europe, which is that there's something very special about the Western institutions like NATO, like the old Bretton Woods institutions, like the IMF, which would not give China voting rights that were appropriate for its contributions to the IMF. That's now changed. The IMF has been reformed. But the development of these new institutions, like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, like the New Development Bank, it really provides a new way of helping to finance these things. One of the major differences is that the AIIB does not plan to have the kinds of conditionalities that the IMF or the World Bank often attach to their loans. China currently does more direct investment in infrastructure in Africa than the World Bank as a whole, just China. So, unfortunately, politics exists in the world. So, this big surprise, right? So, like the idea that Russia is, the great enemy of mankind and we shouldn't work together with Russia on anything, etc. Say, well, you can always find something to work on with people, and that's the way you turn enemies into friends, is, work together on something. China's rise is not a threat to the world. China doesn't, exhibit a very strong history of trying to conquer the world. China itself has been the victim of colonization and the forcing of opium on it, for example. So it's an outdated outlook, and one that I'm very hopeful will change. And it's got the potential to change here, and it's increasingly changing in Europe, where more and more nations are saying, for example, we should be working more with China. Or, hey, let's stop these sanctions on Russia. There's no need to have geopolitics or to prevent someone else's rise. That's the outlook of Zeus. We should be Prometheus.
Thank you, Jason. Let me add a little bit to that. From personal experience, I started my career with NASA and the Space Agency. I was young, naive. I had a very myopic view of the world. I had a conversation with Werner von Braun. Now, I was a young kid, and von Braun was kind of patting me on the head. And I was complaining to him that our tax dollars were going to the Russians because we were giving them our docking technology. And von Braun turned around and said to me, look, if we have an astronaut in space, in a satellite going around, and something goes wrong, and the Russians have a bird on the ground that can take off and go up there, all they can do is get up near where we are and watch our astronaut die because they have no way of getting him out. They didn't have EVA spacesuits in those days. And he said, that's why we're giving him our docking technology, so we can save our lives and we can save theirs. And that's exactly what happened. And this was cooperation in space. The previous administration also had a very myopic look. We are barred, in some cases, for what are called ITAR reasons, that's International Transfer of Technology, to work with China, and in some cases Russia too, and have a space program that is multifunctional, crosses national boundaries. I'd like to see that changed. China is making some stunning inroads in space. We in America could be part of it. So could Russia. I could stand here for a half hour and tell you what my thought processes of going to Mars and things like that. But we need to realize that we need to work together. For the same reasons that von Braun gave me, they happen to be applicable to the Chinese space program and the American space program. We have to change these things. I am personally working hard to make sure it happens. And if you have a voice, make sure it gets heard too. Okay, that's a long answer to a short question. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Please walk up. And I think you have to come here. Try this mic. I think it might have been fixed. Hey, all right.
Hi, my name is Ziyu Wang, and I came from China, and I'm doing master's degree in mechatronics robotics in Tandon. I have two questions for Professor Chang. And the first one is that, as we all know, this new Silk Road, it contains two parts. The first one is one belt, and the other one is one road. And it is very hard to develop them at the same time, because maybe it costs a lot of money or time or some materials. And in your opinion, which one will be developed or first, or have the privilege? This is the first question.
The first question, I did not quite get the first question. Sorry.
The first question is that one belt, one road, which one will be developed first? Because I don't think they can develop at the same time very well.
Well, I think they will develop simultaneously. However, I think the land road will develop first. And most of the resources and the funding would actually spend in the land road. See, the maritime road is much better developed already. See, but they are continuing developing that. For example, now new ports have just been built along the shores of Malaysia. That would be key points. Points for logistics, for transportation of goods, now through the sea route. And also, there's something happened. Sri Lanka, they are building a new port that is a very important connecting point between the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf. That's the sea route. And also, there's a new port being built, almost completed. The Qatar, wait a minute. That port on the shores of Pakistan. Qatar, yes, that port has been built, just been completed. These are the major points for sea transportation. So a seaport would be developed. However, the land route is much more expensive, and it involves so many countries. Whenever you're going through other countries, there's always the question of custom, taxation, and also, agreement. whenever you're going through some country, you got to reach some kind of international agreement, or it can be quite complicated. And besides, we're talking about we're going through many countries of different cultures, of different religions. You hear about terrorism. The terrorism is going on along those countries. It could be a very dangerous route. So I say they are spending much more money develop the land route first. Sea route, it takes less effort. It's already in existence. Any new development does not greatly improve the current situation.
Thank you. And my second question is that, as we may know, that both China and America are very strong power around the world, and sometimes they cooperate, and sometimes they, in some area they might fight with each other. And in my opinion, I really want to know, will America be very happy to help China or involve this process to develop the New Silk Road?
Well, that's a very good question. In a way, Jason Ross already said something like that. That has a great deal to do with the Sino-American diplomatic relation. I'll tell you what. United States has gradually considered China as a competitor. Normally, you don't want to compare a competitor. You consider your competitor as an enemy. In fact, if you build if you attack a friend, your friend will gradually become your enemy. Or if you compete with your friend will become your enemy. I think things are changing gradually politically. For example, when Donald Trump first got elected, he wants to play the diplomacy of two-China policy. He wants to recognize Taiwan as a separate China. There are two countries. Well, Kissinger pointed out very well, if you consider Taiwan as a country, you're making China as your permanent enemy. So I think Kissinger has great influence. Well, I think he begins to see, I can see some hopeful sign that our president or the policy of our nation is changing gradually. He has firmly stated during this visit, today's visit, that he will abide by the one China policy. Let's face it, he had no prior experience in politics. He was a businessman. He gradually realizes cooperation will benefit all the countries mutually. And if they're in the case of competition, in the case of a war, there's going to be no winners in today's modern world, because those countries, and even small country, can make big troubles for major countries. And between the major countries, that's an impossibility, because we could even destroy the whole world. I think people begin to see that. I can see, the statement by Donald Trump, even today, he said, we absolutely reached no agreement. However, we have developed a new friendship. I say everything moving in the right direction. Kissinger played a very important role. He had a very good understanding of geopolitics of the world. So I'm hopeful. I think things will improve. Now, Steve Bannon is removed. But his cabinet still staffed by very conservative people. Peter Navarro, the economist, he's a China hater. Maybe someday his role is going to become less and less important, because Kushner and Ivanka, they would not agree with Peter Navarro. So I see some hopeful sign.
But according to your answer, I have an additional question. Yeah, as you said, things are changing, but the attitude right now, for example, USA and Japan, they do not contribute to three of the banks. And how long would you predict that the USA will change their attitude?
Oh, that gradual process. Gradual process. Well, there are some signs. It can change pretty rapidly. But there are a lot of changes ever since he takes the office. He begins to see he began to see, as a new politician, that certain things, there's certain ways to do certain things. That is, confrontation will get us nowhere. And cooperation will benefit not only two countries, but the whole world. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
I'd like to add to that answer. I think you're going to see the administration developing. Right now, there are many, many positions of importance in the administration that have not yet been filled by President Trump. And President Trump's mentality is that of trading and cooperation. And once these positions are filled, I think you'll see movement toward that international cooperation, which has been lacking for this country for quite a while. So I think the prospects are quite bright for the United States and Japan to join in this worldwide effort of a win-win situation for everybody. We have time for a couple more questions before a break. Yes, sir.
Hi, my question directly to panel. By the way, my name is Benny Vu. I'm from the industry. Well, my specific question is that despite to the geopolitical, in contrast to Eurasian infrastructure development, as far the connectivity in the hemisphere, as far as the United States concerned, North America versus the South, the infrastructure development, as far as North and South concerned, how the connectivity be developed in the future?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Yeah, but you're asking between the North and the South?
You know, the North America to the South.
Oh, well, if you mean North and South America, then Oh, okay. Well, we're going to have Albert. Yeah, we're going to have two. Hal Cooper and Albert Pozzotrigo are both going to speak about the infrastructure of the Americas after the coffee break. So, I defer to their later presentations for now. I think is good.
My opinion, you know, like Dr. Chen mentioned before, the Eurasia development. As far as the AI be concerned, there's more than almost 70 countries involved except the United States. So I hope that our administration, especially the President Trump, might take into initiative as far as the new Schiller development concerned. I mean, because the infrastructure in the United States, we need it to upgrade the system overall, and how that the connectivity as far as the infrastructure development concerned. So this is my question: how the linkage between that?
No, I agree with you, by the way.
I completely understand exactly what he was asking.
He's also looking at the infrastructure of the United States and the fact that the development and regeneration of our own infrastructure is going to make us a better trading partner for the rest of the world.
That's exactly right. Yes. And we have to develop not only within our own country, but as we connect others to Canada, Mexico, and Latin America. I know Ifan and I will both be speaking about that, Mr. Pozzotrigo as well. And we also need to be thinking about how do we connect to Canada and Alaska and Russia and China, and I'll be speaking about that.
This will give you good incentive to come back after the break. All right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think okay. Yes, sir? We have, and you'll get next, and then we take a break.
Good afternoon. I'm Hardik Agrawal. I'm a junior in the construction management department. And as a junior, as I hear today that there's $20 trillion worth of projects or infrastructure that we are going to need as a community, it really makes me feel that I've chosen the right career path. And my question is, what were the initial data or the metrics on which the routes were developed? Like we see that there's a map where we notice, like, do you have a base plan that this is a route for the maritime and this is a specific route for the land trade, like that's being developed right now? What are the metrics for that?
Well, some of the maps that we've shown are a composite of proposals that are made in different places. So, for example, China has laid out, let me stand up, I feel funny sitting down.
Yeah, speak in your mic.
China, for example, has laid out 6 land routes. So really the term one belt, one road, China, I mean, that is the name of it in Chinese, but now they prefer the English translation, Belt and Road Initiative, they like to call it, because there are now 6 land routes, 6 belts. Those are worked out to varying degrees of definition. Some of them are very clear. The new Eurasian land bridge, since it has trains going on it already, that one is very clear. Some of them, such as the proposals for connecting with Myanmar and going into ASEAN, this is a little bit less worked out. As you may be aware, China and India sometimes butt heads, and the Chinese proposals really go around India. This is part of the Gwadar port that Dr. Chang mentioned with developing of the Gwadar port in Pakistan. In part is that it avoids India, which unfortunately there is some conflict with China on that. Regarding the other parts of the world, the best that I can say is that the report, the large orange report that you saw on the table outside, this is something that's been worked on for a couple of decades by Executive Intelligence Review, and the different components of it have been worked on by different researchers. Dr. Cooper here has been one of the major authors in terms of working out the American and connecting through to Russia along the Bering Strait with these areas. And so it's really been a collaborative process that EIR, the Schiller Institute, has really been pulling together and making a proposal. So now there's a variety of different plans out there. There isn't one unified outlook. You know, we've got a certain outlook, China has a certain outlook, India has a certain outlook. They aren't the same, but we need to come together to work out, you know, specifically which projects will be built. And one of the very interesting things that we're going to hear from Richard Trufant after the break is about the management of a multinational program. Dr. Chang, in response to the previous question, in describing the difference between a sea route versus a land route, where you're crossing through maybe 10 national countries, 10 borders, how do you deal with the customs? How do you deal with track maintenance along the way? Who is responsible for each section? If you put out a request for proposal, who decides who gets it, given that it may involve multiple countries? So the management science of directing a project or of overseeing and ensuring the sustainable functioning and, you know, on-time freight rates, this sort of thing, really demands new work in the field of infrastructure management. And we're going to have a whole presentation on that topic this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Just a quick question, Dr. Cooper, if I may. So what has more value? Is it about quicker travel time? Let's say air travel is always more quicker than land or sea travel. Is it more valuable to have a quicker travel time, or is it more valuable to have a land or a sea transport route?
It depends on which mode you're talking about. For passengers, time is very important. For certain goods, it's also important. But what's probably more important on the freight side is predictability and certainty as compared to time per se. When you're delivering coal or oil or grain, it just has to get there. And you want to know when it gets there. It doesn't have to go at 300 miles an hour. Now, if you're going to be traveling several thousand miles and you personally are traveling, you probably don't want to sit in the train for 3 or 4 days if you don't have to.
Right.
And that's why we need higher speed and high-speed transportation. This is not going to be limited to conventional railroads. Certainly we have the magnetic levitation technology. Elon Musk has proposed the Hyperloop tubes capable of traveling of speeds of 700 or 800 or 900 miles an hour. Now, the question is, can a person in that type of a transport system, what are going to be the physiologic effects? That hasn't been worked out, but we have to give Elon Musk credit. He is a great marketer, if nothing else, because he's got all these people at 200 universities all working, and he's not paying any one of them a cent, and we're getting all this work done. And so you have to give him credit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question. Come on up.
Hello, this is I'm Song Young Kim, and I'm background from the mechanical engineering, and right now I'm doing the robotics and mechatronics. So I know you guys are from civils, more like insurance money, but for the mechie stuff, I would like to know heard about the more train systems, like what kind of train are you looking for, and if you, because I never heard of the high-speed train for using cargo. I know they're using for passengers. I know that they're how much they spend it, but I think you mentioned one time about the Germany to the China, but it doesn't enough for me. Like what kind of train are you expect, and how much is same as following the question too. Like how much you can save the time. I think the train for me is saving the time. To me, is that you can shipping way more than ship or any other faster than you can ship way more than airplanes, and then faster than ship. That's a good point. Advantage of using the train. So I would like to know exactly how you're going to do it.
In the United States, the users of high-speed ground transportation for cargo would be United Parcel, Federal Express, the U.S. Post Office, DHL, etc., where there is high-value material. It isn't typically extremely large in terms of weight, but it's very important in terms of value. Now, when you ship coal or oil or grain, a different set of economics. Again, it gets back to what are you transporting, but in terms of people, you want to get there as fast as possible, yes, including commuting into New York through Penn Station.
So your Silk Road is more like a passengers rather than the cargo?
Pardon?
So I thought it's more cargo rather than passengers.
Yes, cargo. Yeah.
I mean, the proposals are really both. I mean, it's, you know, if you're thinking about how do you develop an area, well, a developed area is going to have high-speed, you know, passenger transport. It's also going to have an ability to move goods relatively quickly and efficiently. I mean, like Dr. Cooper said, depending on their value, you know, high-speed or low-speed rail. But the proposal is not purely cargo or only passenger. It's
But you know that if you rail the railroad for cargo and the railroad for passengers different.
Oh,
because you have the stop point is different. Before that, the time is different. Because I'm from South Korea, we know the high low speed, and then what's the problem for that too?
Right. In this particular case, I think you're probably looking at railroad systems that have multiple sets of tracks. If you had high-speed passenger and valuable cargo, and then conventional speed rail handling conventional freight, and probably some local passenger traffic as well, that would be the best type of solution. But they would have to be separate because their operational characteristics are basically incompatible. Like running 35-mile-an-hour freight trains on the Northeast Corridor when we have 150-mile-an-hour passenger trains, it doesn't work. You have to separate them.
Yeah, totally. So, okay, thank you.
All right, folks, how about a round of applause for our speakers?